get into this. This week, gentlemen, the name on the marquee has got to be Cory the Sandman Sandhagen, who this past weekend defeated Marlon Chito Vera by a unanimous decision, although the scorecards were a little wonky. Mark, let me throw it over to you first. What was your impression of the fight and over Sandhagen's performance, Chito's performance, and the scorecards in the end?
I mean, the scorecard was just wild. I mean, like, that dude needs to go to jail, or I'm not sure. I don't know how you possibly generate that scorecard. But that aside, sometimes I need to listen to myself. I have been voicing my concern on here for a little bit about how Chito's style was going to cause him to run into issues once he hit the level of fighting other elite fighters. And instead of trusting that, I kind of talked myself into believing that he could take the next step in his development, but he did not, and he fought the same way. And exactly what I was afraid of is what happened. He was faced with a style that was, A, constantly mixing it up and scoring points when he wasn't. And, okay, he's seen that before. But more importantly, a style that, B, was not easily figured out. He couldn't get Cory's timing down. He couldn't anticipate Cory's next move. He couldn't walk him into something, move him into something, because Cory's just too high level. And that made it look like Chito got exposed in there, which I guess you could say he kind of did. But I don't think it's so much a talent thing with him. I really don't. I think it's a strategy thing. He just doesn't fight the right way. And, again, when he was fighting dudes who were more hittable, it wasn't getting exposed as badly. And now it's coming to light a little bit more. And the fact that he couldn't even pick up the pace as the fight went on, when he knew he was losing, was super frustrating. The first time he finally picked it up was with like 20 seconds left.
Yep.
And the fight ends, and you're like, wow, that was a cool 20 seconds. Like, imagine he had fought that way the whole fight. I wonder if this could have looked any different. So, I don't know. Maybe this is going to be the loss that Chito needed to make him adjust his style. You could tell he was really disappointed in the outcome, and it seemed like he kind of had that feeling where he was looking at myself like, how did I just do that? Mm-hmm. So maybe it's the one, and we see some changes that need to be made. But on Cory's side, he looked friggin' fantastic. He looked like he was a full class above Chito in that fight. He did everything he wanted. He had him confused all fight long. Chito couldn't figure him out at all. It was the wrestling early, and then even when Vera started stuffing those, it was just the variety from Cory, the movement on the feet. It was a really nice reminder of how good Cory Sandhagen is, and it jumps him right back into the title mix.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Omar, let me bring you in here. Give us your take on the techniques that Cory was throwing out, sort of thwarting Vera's style.
I think the thing to keep in mind about the way that Cory fought that fight, he was definitely favoring speed over power, right? Definitely trying to make sure that he had multiple shots that were landing and getting strung together. But I don't really know how much of those strikes at any point during those 5 rounds were strikes that were going to do something significant to Chito, like put him on a back leg or make him wobbly or knock him out, stumble him, knock him down. Obviously, with these little gloves, anything is possible, but it was just one of those things where I felt like Chito was fighting in a way that he knew that he wasn't in any danger, but he wasn't doing anything to actually win the fight. And he spent a lot of time, like Mark said, kind of calculating or trying to figure out a way to get in there, but it wasn't really working for him. I think the real big issue is that he's not really... So for me, like in my head, somebody who's moving that much and using movement to that extent and circling and doing all these things, I'm not sure how long it would have taken many fighters to get to a point where you're like, just go for the legs. Try to go for the legs. Try to hit some leg kicks. Try to slow down Cory's movement. Try to make one of his legs heavier at least than the other if you can't get both. And Chito just didn't really seem to do anything. Like, there was no adjustment at any point, not even trying different things. 5 rounds to fuck around and figure something out. Chito didn't really do it. The third round, I guess, is probably the one that you can argue was Chito's, but I would even argue that you're giving him the third round because he looked better than he did in rounds 1 and 2, not necessarily because he won that round. So, I mean, look, Cory definitely won minimum 4 out of the 5, probably 5 out of the 5. The scoring and the refereeing in that fight was wild. But this apparently seems to be a thing in Texas. This Texas commission is atrocious. And being really honest, they should never fucking go back to Texas until they figure this out. I feel like Florida at one point had that reputation. And it wasn't until the pandemic where they're like, now we're going to Florida all the time because Florida hooked us up.
Yeah.
But there was one point where Florida had a commission that didn't know their ass from their elbow. Facts. But, I mean, they're just, they didn't have it. They seem to be on par now, like on track. I haven't really seen anything too egregious recently in the last couple of years now. But now it's all on Texas. And there's a couple of other fights in here that are a little sketchy that I'm sure we'll go through. But this one, I think, was the one where everybody kind of collectively, including Chito Vera, was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, somebody pointed out, I think more than one person pointed out, I know that both of you have seen it, there is a clip of a more of a regional promotion where a guy got triangled into unconsciousness, choked into unconsciousness, and the ref didn't realize it. And to be somewhat fair, or at least a little bit fair, it was one of the guy's arms were a little bit tangled up, and I guess, I mean, watching it on the screen, you're like, holy shit, that guy's probably, the ref should at least check on him. Sure enough, the guy was passed the fuck out. Still getting triangled. The guy who's triangling him is holding on to it for so long, and nothing's happening. He transitions to an armbar, to a guy who's unconscious, and is cranking this poor guy's elbow. Apparently, he tore some ligaments in his arm. He comes to a little bit while he's getting armbarred, and kind of taps, and the ref finally fucking stops it. And that same refereed in the UFC fight night the very next night.
He didn't ref.
He judged.
He judged, excuse me. And it's a bad look, man. It's a bad look.
I don't know if you guys also...
How that's not an immediate suspension. Like, sorry, bud, we won't be seeing you anytime soon.
Like, that's, to me, that's... You're banned.
Well, I don't think you can ban a guy without him having I think it has to be a suspension before you can actually accomplish a ban. That's why I'm saying it that way.
Yeah.
I don't think
there might be some technicalities in there, but the end goal better be he never fucking referees again, ever in his life.
Well, that clip, which is one of the harder ones to watch that I've seen.
I think it might have been the hardest I've ever watched.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand how no one was jumping into the cage.
Right.
Like, usually once you hear people yell a little bit to try to tell the ref, and if the ref doesn't hear them, they're in the cage. This one, people are yelling for, like, I don't even know what, 30 seconds, and no one jumps in.
I don't know. A towel or any, I don't know what. Yeah. Not even his corner,
but I don't know
like other officials.
Yeah.
What was he doing, though? The whole time I'm trying to watch the beginning of that clip, and I'm trying to understand what his thought process is. What are you doing? What are you looking for?
Too casual.
It just, he has a face of somebody who's like looking for something, and he's not finding it, and the fucking guy is dying right on the mat. And I don't know. I don't know what he's looking for. I don't know what more you need.
If a guy is that, I mean, first of all, you got to know what you're looking at. You have to have an understanding of what a triangle looks like when it's sunk in, when it's deep, and when it's locked in. And you got to be talking to the guy who's in the submission, yelling at him, telling him to respond to you a little bit, show you something, wiggle his arm a little bit. It's ridiculous. And I'm not a ref. I've never reffed. As a ring announcer, I've said many times, of all the different jobs, mine is towards the easier end. There are some moments where it's, it feels a little bit high pressure for me. But the fighters have the hardest job. I think the ref has the second hardest job. I think the judges have a harder job than me. So the refs don't have an easy job. I get it. But at the same time, it really raises a lot of questions.
But here's my thing. And we kind of talked about this. We talked about this earlier. Because of the decision.
Because he was judging the next night.
Oh, right. Sorry, yeah. He didn't judge his fight, but yeah.
And just the Texas Commission in general, and how these things happen. How this man even went from that night right into the UFC fight, and no one said anything. No one batted an eye. No one cares. And like Mike had a point that we were talking about in our group chat about, there should be some sportsmanship between some of the fighters and kind of letting go and to a certain extent kind of having the fighter have his own personal responsibility of figuring out when the end of that fight is, if he can feel the guy go out and this, that, and the other. And I get the sentiment. I don't like it. And I don't think it should be on the fighter. And I think there's a reason why there are referees in a fight. And the reality is there are, and we've seen it in modern day MMA where there is a ref, where guys are tapping or guys are submitting, and then if the referee doesn't see it, the guy's let go, and he's like, nah, I didn't say anything, I didn't do anything. And now we're all stuck in this shit show. It doesn't happen very often, but it happens enough that if we start putting it on the fighters in the middle of this chaos, then there's no real fight. You know what I'm saying? Guys can do sneaky shit and do weird things, and it shouldn't be up to these fighters. These fighters, at the end of the day, are fighting for their own lives. One mistake, like we saw with, what's his name? The kid who fucking bent his leg 45 degrees the wrong way.
Phantom taps can happen.
You know what I mean? Like, I think the referees are there for a reason, but I think we need to stop trying to figure out how to circumvent bad referees by putting the responsibility on other people.
100%.
Have good referees. Yeah. Take the time to really train these people, have them understand what the rule set looks like, have them start properly from the ground up. And I've seen some of these referees in local circuits now. A lot of these referees don't even look like they give a fuck to be there.
Yeah.
So don't employ them.
Yes.
Find somebody else. Somebody in the stands could probably do a better job than half of the referees that they seem to employ at these places who don't even seem like they want to be there. So they need to figure it out. I don't know what they're going to need to do. But it's one of these things that, for me, makes me even more adamant about being a referee, because that shit was absolutely madness.
Yeah, I mean, one more anecdote just to talk about this, and we'll get back on track here. One of my first nights ring announcing for Friday night fights in New York, there was one fight, I don't remember who was fighting, but one guy was getting kind of fucked up in the fight. And the guy who was like the commissioner, like basically the equivalent of the commissioner. It was at the time the sanctioning body was the ISKA, the International Sport Kickboxing Association. His name was Tom, and he was on his feet right next to me. I was sitting right next to him at ringside. He was lighting up this ref, screaming at this ref to fucking stop the fight because this kid was just getting fucked up. And he was taking too much punishment. And he's like, what are you doing? Like, you're not giving him a standing A count. You're not stepping in. And the kid was just taking unnecessary punishment. And I think he was right in that moment. So more of that. Like, where was that, man? Anyway, we're getting a little too far afield here. But bringing it back, let's talk about where these two bantamweights go from here. Let's start with Chito Vera. Mark, what are you doing with Chito if you're the matchmaker for the UFC?
So, the one I've heard mentioned a few times, I guess because it's fairly obvious they both lost some high-profile fights recently, is to match up him and Petr Yan. In our world, we kind of threw out that Petr Yan and Davison Figueiredo fight, which I happen to love. So I will give you a couple options that are not Petr Yan. I think that the winner of Ricky Simón and Song Yadong makes a lot of sense for Chito, especially if it's Yadong, because would be a rematch of what was a really controversial fight they had the first time, where most people thought Chito won and the victory went to Yadong. Or might sound a little aggressive, but he is fighting Rob Font. If Adrian Yanez beats Rob Font, I think him and Chito would be wild.
Wow. Break my fucking heart, well, don't you?
Omar's entire body is a boner for that fight.
It's sad, though, because you know somebody's got to lose. I'm going to eventually have to pick against Chito Vera and Adrian Yanez.
Yeah.
Like, why? Yeah.
What a great fight that would be.
It would be, though. It would be.
good to move on to Omar for his idea for Chito. Omar, if you had your druthers, what would you do next with Chito Vera if you were the matchmaker for the UFC?
So it sounded like Vera called out Peter Yan.
Oh, did he? I didn't even hear that.
Yeah, so the Piotr Yan thing was a thing that I think Vera brought up, and I'm kind of okay with that. If we're being honest, stylistically, I think it's a hell of a matchup.
Man. Oh my god,
it's a great
fucking fight.
Fantastic matchup. I don't know what Davidson Figueiredo is doing, and I think at this point we're kind of just ethering into the wind. And if Piotr Yan is looking for something to do, I think Chito Vera is a perfect one to take, especially for the summertime. So I'll do the Piotr Yan pick.
Okay, let's talk about the winner here. Cory the Sandman Sandhagen. He's now 9-3 in the UFC, 16-5 overall. Omar, what's next for the Sandman as he marches back up into the elite at bantamweight?
For me, Cory made it easy, man. He calls out Merab. Nobody calls out Merab. And he did it in... He might need some work on how he called out Merab. Sounded like it was a fucking Jimmy John's commercial.
You ain't gonna like it.
Yeah, I got a sandwich for you. You ain't gonna like the way it tastes.
No, yeah, and it don't taste good.
All right, cool story. But Barab's in kind said, "I'm ready to eat" or some shit like that. He's like, I'll take it all, whatever it was. But that's a good fight, man. That's a really good fight. Merab is one of those guys that I feel like is very interesting to call out because we all know about Merab's pace. We all know about his craziness and his wildness and his forward pressure. But that last fight with Piotr Yan, man, his ability to go up, down, up, down, up, down for 5 rounds and not slow down and essentially outwork Piotr Yan is madness. And
can't wait.
Cory Sandhagen might literally be up to the challenge, and I think it makes that fight very, very interesting.
Mark, what about you? Who do you think's next for Cory?
Yeah, apparently the UFC tried to set up Merab and Umar Nurmagomedov, which is wild to me that they tried to go that route. It seems like they're trying to find someone who they think can match up and beat Merab because they're annoyed that he's not fighting Aljo. But him and Cory is the obvious answer. We said it last week that the winner of this fight against Merab was the obvious answer. It's perfect. You're going to have Aljo and Cejudo happening soon. You know, whenever they're going to book the winner against O'Malley, what's it going to be, September-ish? Yeah. Make this fight in like August, Merab and Cory, and the winner is waiting right there. So it couldn't have worked out easier, I don't think.
Well, with that being said, let us move on. Congrats to Cory Sandhagen for picking up this big win and making it onto our marquee. Okay, co-main event, women's bantamweight division. Holly Holm defeats Yana Kunitskaya by unanimous decision. And here we go. Omar, let me start.
Santos.
Excuse me. I still like saying Kunitskaya.
Yeah,
Kunitskaya is dope.
It's a cool last name, man.
Yeah.
Omar, start us off here. What was your take on Holly with a spectacular performance showing that she's still got it at 41 years old?
Holly Holm, if nothing else, man, is consistent. The woman is a winner. You may not always like the way she wins. You may not be as entertained with some wins as you are the others. But Holly Holm knows how to win. And I didn't expect her to be so ground heavy, to be honest. But there is something kind of amazing about a woman who started her career as a professional boxer.
Yeah.
And now, in my head, is like, when I was watching it, I was like, damn, Holly Holm just, such a good grappler, like, always grappling based. And then I was thinking, she's not fucking grappling based. She's a boxer. Yeah. But she's good, man. She's good. And the growth that she's had throughout her MMA career and the consistency she's had throughout her MMA career, even her losses, she's never really gotten sunned for the most part. I think she had her issues with, I want to say Cyborg was one of the ones she had a big issue with. Obviously Nunes, yes. But she's never been completely outclassed. There's always been some, always had some fight in her. But this was one of those fights, man, where I just thought she was better. I thought she had an avenue of least resistance. She took it. She found it. And Santos looked really lost on the ground. Holly Holm comes away with a solid victory, a victory you can't really argue with, man. Good win for her.
Mark, what about you? What was your take on the ageless wonder, Holly Holm getting it done, shutting out Yana Santos, by the way, 30-27, 30-27, and a 30-26 on the scorecards.
Yeah.
Yeah, Holly looked good, man. She said it herself after the fight. But she felt Yana's strength, I think, early in those clinch situations. And Yana has historically always been good there. Mm-hmm. And she just decided she'd rather not be there. And at first she was like, all right, I'm going to try to stay at range. And that was going okay. She seemed to be probably winning the striking, not by a ton. But then once she found that takedown at the end of round 1, I think she felt, you know what, it was pretty easy down here. This is going to be my easiest path to victory. It's going to prevent any clinch situations from happening again. And she just leaned on it the whole rest of the fight, and Yana couldn't do anything about it. So it's good to see Holly show off other aspects of her game, because that's honestly how you continue to feel fresh and interesting as a contender when you're 41 years old. So that was good to see from her. In the third, I thought she was even about to find a sub at one point. I was like, wow, Holly Holm's about to get a submission, but not quite. But either way, a really solid and clear victory for Holly, and kind of resets her right back into a big fight despite the weird loss in her last one.
Absolutely. Sticking with you, Mark, what do you want to do with Holly next? If you were the matchmaker, you're going to shoot her right back up towards a title shot?
Yeah, I'm going to shoot her pretty far, actually, simply because all the girls who are in this mix right now, it's weird because no fights are getting booked. At first, we were like, is Nunes and Pena 3 going to happen? Then it was Aldana's going to fight Nunes. So we were like, maybe Pena's going to fight Pennington. All those people didn't want to fight each other, so none of those things happened. So it's like all those people that are in the mix, Holly already has beaten Irene Aldana. She's already beaten Raquel Pennington. So I'm kind of like, look, unless we're doing Nunes Pena 3, let's just do Pena and Holly. It's like the one high-level fight that we haven't seen. So let's make sure we get to see it.
Omar, what about you?
I would agree, man. That was exactly the one I was going for, just because at this point it's probably the one fight we haven't seen. Everybody's kind of been, recycling each other here and there, and with whenever you have a champion at the top of the division that's dominant, like Amanda Nunes, even Valentina Shevchenko, a lot of these girls are fighting for second place just to be able to get to that title shot, and so there's a lot of these top contenders that are just sort of going through the motions and fighting each other and recycling each other. But Juliana Pena is kind of that one person right now where we haven't seen her against Holly Holm. And to not have fought Holly Holm in that division is sort of like not having fought Neil Magny at welterweight. So I just think it's about that time, man. It presents a real interesting stylistic matchup because, like we just said, Holly is not technically a grappler. But at this point, I don't know if Juliana's going to be able to sun her on the ground like she has a lot of other people. So I'd be down to see exactly how that fight goes. It's very interesting.
What's crazy is that Holly has really, I said this at last week's episode, Holly has fought a who's who in her career overall. And her record is in the UFC is only 7-6 going into this weekend. Imagine if Yana Santos defeated Holly Holm and Holly was a 500 fighter in the UFC. That would be nuts.
There's so many more than you realize who are like that. And I see it because I update my rankings and I update their records when I do it. I can't tell you how often I'm like, this fucking amazing person is like barely over 500. It's wild.
Totally.
Dude, but when you look at their records, though, especially somebody like Holly Holm, there's no scrubs on there with wins on it.
Exactly.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean? There's just the elite of the elite, the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
There's and a lot of, I feel like a lot of the top guys and women who have records like that, like 8-6 or like whatever, like close to those 50-50, when you look at the losses that they have, it's like, shit, yeah, I can see why you have those losses on your record. That's going to happen.
Yeah, literally, Ketlin Vieira is the only loss on Holly's record that's not like stud.
Totally.
Yeah, to be honest, a part of me, man, wants her to take that one back. I didn't know if it was too soon. I think it's only been a year.
I thought about it, but Ketlin just lost. So, like, would you do that? I don't know.
I would, just because. How could you not want that one back? As Holly Holm, how could you not want that one back? Especially this girl coming off a loss. Just doesn't really seem like she should be in that spot. I don't know. I've never really been super sold on Ketlin Vieira personally.
Oh, me neither. But it was a boring fight, so I doubt the UFC wants to be booking that again.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Yana Santos. Speaking of, with this loss, she falls to a 500 record within the UFC, 14-7 as a pro now with 1 no contest. Omar, at women's bantamweight, what would you do next with Yana Santos, Ni Kunitskaya? Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess they have her at number 6 on the UFC rankings. I don't know how I feel about that, personally. In fact, before I do that, because fuck the UFC rankings, Mark, what do you have Yana Santos at?
Thank you.
Because she's been out for a minute, obviously, with the pregnancy and all that stuff, so.
I don't have her much lower. I have her at number 8. But Misha's in my rankings, and she's not in theirs. So that would make her 7.
No, she's there. She's 11.
Oh, shit. Yeah, that's silly to me. So, yeah. So I take that back then. Yeah, I have her at number 8.
Okay. All right. So with that in mind, I was going to give her a top 10 fighter. I didn't know if she was going to be below top 10 or above, but I still think she should get somebody still in the top 10 on the lower end of the top 10 spectrum. I believe Myra Buena Silva's already been rebooked on a short notice fight, but if Cal Rosa's not doing anything, that might be something that we can visit.
Okay. Mark,
Yeah, I think Buena Silva is the one who is fighting Tate, right?
Yes.
She is, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I believe that is correct.
I'm going to go a similar path. I'm going to go Maycee Chasson.
Ooh.
They're both girls who kind of have had some wins that make you go, oh, look at them. But then they can't really string anything together. So give them each. They're both coming off a loss right now. So someone gets to kind of restart things.
Macy's another one that hasn't fought Holly Holm, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah, she's never really quite got to that level. I mean, she had her shot at Raquel, but obviously she lost it. Other than that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on.
Interesting fight size-wise, though, her to fight Holly, now that you say it.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, Raquel Pennington, God bless this girl. 12-5.
I say it all the time, man.
In the UFC.
Criminally
Motherfucker.
underrated. Criminally.
Jesus.
Right?
Yeah,
She just goes to work. None of it's pretty, but she just fucking goes to work.
Bro, she looks like she's the only one right now in the UFC bantamweight division, female bantamweight division, other than the champion in Amanda Nunes, that has double-digit wins.
Yep.
That's fucking bananas,
That's
my
accurate.
guys.
That's accurate.
Yeah, for sure.
Crazy.
Yep.
Well, let's see. Let's move on here to Nate Landwehr defeating Austin Lingo by submission via rear naked choke at 4-11 of the second round. What a great fight for Nate Landwehr. Mark, let me throw it over to you first this time. Give us your take.
Yeah, this was fun while it lasted, which we kind of assumed it would be. Lingo was doing a nice job early in this one. He was backing Nate up, landed clean a good handful of times, and then Nate kind of settled in, started to get more comfortable countering, kind of swung that fight back to about even, I would say, by the end of the first round. And then round 2, he had kind of flipped the switch. He was the one walking forward, regardless of what was coming at him. His pressure really was making Lingo move a lot, circle out a lot. Lingo's offense started to kind of disappear a little bit, and then eventually got him trapped on the fence. That's where all the kicks started landing, which is what led to the takedown, and then some nice ground and pound right into the tight rear naked choke. So it was a great job to pour it on by Nate once he sensed he was starting to swing that momentum.
Omar, what was your take? Nate Landwehr, just too dialed in for Austin Lingo, just bringing too much intensity. What do you think?
Yeah, man, it's hard not to enjoy this man. He's got a bit of a character to him. But when it comes to the fight itself, man, the man's a tank. You know, he doesn't do it the prettiest. He doesn't do it the most efficiently. He doesn't do it the safest.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But man, he's another one again who just seems to get it done. And however he needs to get it done, he'll get it done. And he makes it a real fight. He's a fun dude, man. I don't know what his ceiling is, right? I think some of his approaches to these fights, I think, are very fun and fast-paced, but they leave him very open and very vulnerable. And I think a lot of the top guys might take more advantage of him than he's been accustomed to. So I like him. I think he's fun, but we'll see what happens with him.
Yeah, man. Let's quickly move on here and talk about where Nate Landwehr goes from here. Omar, give me a name. Men's featherweight. What do you think we do next with Mr. Landwehr?
Okay. I don't know if this kid is... I try to use this website to figure out what the fuck's going on with these people, but this man doesn't update his website anymore. It's the way he used to. So, I hope this man doesn't have anything booked. I feel like he will, because of course he will. But... No, he already does. Balls. I was going to say Bryce Mitchell, but I forgot Bryce Mitchell has already been booked up with somebody. Bryce Mitchell, I think, is a bit of a stretch, bit of a leap.
Yeah, that would be a big.
It's a big leap, but I thought stylistically it would be very, very interesting.
Would be.
What about Edson, dog? Him versus Edson would be madness.
It would be
Fight.
madness. It really would. Man, you're shooting my boy Nate up the ladder. Well, I guess I'm not that much below you, actually, now that I think about it. Oh, no, wait. Edson's fighting Billy Q.
I was just going to
But
say.
that's super soon, actually. It's like next week or 2 weeks. So it could
Let's
be
go
the
with that. The
Yeah.
winner.
Yeah.
Give him the winner.
There you go.
Down. What about you?
I'll keep it easy. I'll just go right back to the fight that was supposed to be on this card. If you remember, Lingo was a late
Caceres.
replacement. I kind of like that Caceres fight. I think that's
Yeah.
a fun one. I would like to see that.
Love it. Love it. Okay, let's move on. Here we go. What's next here? Maycee Barber defeats Andrea Lee in the women's flyweight division by split decision, 29-28, 30-27 for Barber. Lee getting her own 29-28. Mark, let me start with you again. Give us your take. Who did you have winning this fight?
Another big Maycee Barber split decision that everyone's talking about, and another time that I think it was the correct call. I scored it for Maycee. I thought round one was a clear Maycee round, which is funny because I feel like that might be the round I see most people giving to Lee. Lee got a big takedown in that round, but I thought she did absolutely nothing with it. All she did was get her arm trapped and her head elbowed about 5 times from bottom viciously. And the stand-up was pretty even. The biggest shot or two of the stand-up was Maycee's. So I thought round one was clearly for Maycee, despite the fact that she was on her back. The other two were super close. Round two, I thought Maycee did well on the feet. She turned up the pressure. She was landing the bigger shots. Lee, of course, did get another big takedown. She did a little more here. Still not that much. Again, I feel like this one got closer because of the groundwork. Gun to my head, I'm still giving that round to Maycee, which makes the third irrelevant. And I'm glad because the third is one where I was really, really torn. I thought it was the definition of a toss-up round. I don't have any issue scoring that round for either girl. If you want to give 2 and 3 to Lee, obviously I understand it. Again, I see a lot of people saying Maycee won one of those and giving Lee the first. I thought the first was Maycee's. But either way, it's a close-ass fight. Someone's got to win it. If the scorecards went to Lee, you would see people bitching that Barber got screwed. It was just one of those fights. It had to go someone's way. So it happened to go Maycee's way. I do think she landed more damage in the fight. I think Lee's was more control without doing so much. And damage is supposed to be the number one criteria. So it doesn't surprise me that Maycee got the cards. I thought Lee was surprisingly tentative in the striking. I get it that Maycee's powerful and kind of quick, and she's an athlete. But I think Lee could have opened up more in the striking and looked better in this fight than she did. But for whatever reason, she didn't seem to want to do that, and she let Maycee steal it from her. So, yeah, another big win for Maycee that's by controversial split. Maybe she'll get a clear win one day.
Right. Omar, going over to you this time. Lead us off with your winner of this fight and your take overall of Barber's performance.
So I had to watch this fight twice. The first time I watched it, I thought Andrea Lee had won that fight. I thought all 3 rounds. I thought the last round was definitely the one that was the most contentious of the 3. I watched it when I watched it the second time. I did think Maycee Barber won the first round. I still had Lee winning the second round, and then the third round. I think I'm even more confused now, having watched the third round the second time than I was the first time. And at that point, honestly, you could really give it to whoever. If Maycee winning the fight doesn't really bug me as much as it did the first time I watched it. For those who think that Andrea Lee won the fight, I get that too. I think I personally had it with Andrea Lee at the end, by the end of it, but I wasn't dying on that hill the second time I rewatched it.
Totally.
That third round might have been one of those ones where if it was like a 9-9 or 10-10 or something like that, I'd been like,
Really?
yeah, all right.
I agree. Yeah. It could have been a 10-10. I'd be like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel like we should see more 10-10s in MMA? Sorry, that's such a huge tangent.
Man, honestly, I'm so bummed out by the scoring criteria and the rounds. The more we talk about it, the more we see a lot of this shit. I wish they would just do pride scoring, so we could
Pride
just
scoring. Who do you think won that fight? I didn't even think about that.
I think Maycee won that fight.
Pride scoring, I do too. Yeah, she did more damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
if we're gonna keep the points, it should just be expanded. Like 10-9 should be for when you sneak around. 10-8 should be clear round. 10-7 should be when you drub someone. Like, it should be more room. There's 10 numbers there. Why can we only use 10-9 and 10-8?
I feel like it's easier to interpret a fight as a whole, though, than trying to interpret moments and individual rounds of effective grappling, whatever the fuck that means, and effective striking and all this other bullshit.
Totally.
I find it easier to just watch a fight and just by the end of it be like, okay, I think he won.
That will always be my number one choice. Yeah, I agree.
I only ask because I know that recently, scoring criteria has loosened up in terms of becoming a little bit more liberal with the number of 10-8s that are given out, right?
Yep.
So I also wonder sometimes if 10-10s should become a little bit more generous in terms of how many 10-10s are given out.
If they didn't give fucking 10-10 to Rose and Carla, they ain't giving 10-10s out ever. So
okay, let's move on. I think we're going into the lightning round, are we not? I think so.
I believe so.
Okay, here we go. Lightning round where Mark and Omar give me their lightningest takes, a phrase or two perhaps, the bullet point, the elevator pitch of the recap of the fight. In the middleweight division, Albert Duraev defeats Chito Bang Bang Njokuani by a split decision. Mark, go first.
This one was tough. Round one, of course, Duraev catches the kick. He turns it into a takedown, and he's able to control Chito the rest of the round. And obviously, Chito did get up, then he was able to take him down again. But then round two, Chito just fights the whole round so tentative, and it's so frustrating because then you see what he was able to do in round three, and you're like, man, if you just would have fought a little bit in round two, you could have still had these cards. And I don't know, I guess he was just tentative from being taken down in round one, and he was like, fuck, I got to be careful, make sure this doesn't happen again. But he did nothing in round two. He just walked around, and he could have had, like I said, he could have had this W if he did a little bit of something. Obviously, round three, he did look good, but doesn't go his way. Again, Duraev didn't do a ton in round two either, but I get Duraev winning that fight. So nice win for him to get Chito on his resume.
Omar.
Yeah, second round was kind of annoying. I kind of went with Chito in there just because I didn't think Duraev really did anything either. Mm-hmm. But the reality is this is one of those, I think this is what we were worried about, whether Duraev was going to be able to take him to the ground, whether Chito was going to be comfortable and how he was going to react to it. And after the first round, it fucked with him. And you can see that it did. And I think by the third round, I'm assuming his corner was like, come on, son. Come on, son, you're down two. And
How
you know,
many times
Chito,
are we going to say that for the rest of our lives?
and Chito went for it in the third round. And you could tell, I think he kind of just went balls to the wall. Whatever happens, happens. But he needed a little bit more of that in the second round to make it more definitive. I think the fact that the round two was left up to interpretation is where he lost the fight.
God. Yeah, it's crazy because Duraev couldn't really take him down. Like, if he had never caught that kick, it might have just been Chito winning for 15 straight minutes.
But I also wish that Chito, especially coming from the background he comes from, make the man pay. If he's not taking you down, if he's shooting for you and not taking you down, he can't do it, make him pay. When you create that separation, throw a motherfucking kick. Throw a knee when he comes inside. Like,
yeah,
you can't let these... And this goes for everything. You can't give guys the ability to take free shots on you, whether that's an actual wrestling shot, a kick, a strike, whatever. Like, people just, like, take shots and just, okay, cool, damn, fuck that one up. Like, hit that bitch back. Throw something back. Make them think that when they throw something, there's something that's going to return, that there's going to be some sort of counter. Don't let guys run over you. And I think Chito got to a point where, you know, in the third round, it was one thing, but he was just so tentative after that first takedown that it ruined the whole fight for him.
Okay, let's keep going.
oh God, I forgot it's a lightning round.
Real quick, because this is probably where we would have been mentioning this fight. Shout out to Manel Kopp for getting fucked over so many times.
Christ almighty.
His opponent, Alex Perez, pulled out the day of the fight, the morning of the fight, because he got sick.
Of the fight.
The evening of the fight,
Did he get sick?
He had a seizure.
He had a seizure while he was warming up.
Jesus.
Which, like, obviously that's terrible, but, like, Alex Perez doesn't ever make it to the cage. Like, at what point do we just be like, all right, this is not happening anymore?
I mean, but this is... I mean, but what do you do, though? I mean, he was there. He was there, and his body just said, fuck you.
But it's every fight. I mean, I don't...
Apparently, it didn't have to do with... Because my thing was, he cut too much weight. Like, my immediate reaction when I heard he seized up, he didn't have... Like, he was missing electrolytes. His body just was like, meh, and it just went out.
Right.
But apparently, it had nothing to do with him cutting weight, supposedly. He's doing a bunch of testing and stuff like that at this point to try to figure out what happened. I was going to touch on it in this sphere, but fuck it now. But yeah, he's not thrilled, but it doesn't seem like it was from the weight cut. If it wasn't from the weight cut and it's his body just telling him to go screw himself, I mean, what are you going to do, man? He was there, he showed up, he did what he was supposed to do, and his body just didn't go.
I don't know.
I'm sure he trained.
Then don't book him in a high-profile fight. And his next fight has to be against someone who's not a high-profile. Or
have a backup or something at this point. Because Kopp shouldn't have gotten screwed for that.
Yeah.
Agree. Okay, let's move on. Featherweight division. Daniel Pineda defeats Tucker Lutz by submission via guillotine choke. Omar, go first.
I thought Pineda looked good, man. I thought he looked very good. That movement into that submission, I thought was really nice. I thought he showed real control in there. I thought he showed pretty good dominance, especially in that second round. And Daniel Pineda looks like he's definitely here to stay, man. Hopefully we don't get any pops or anything like that.
Mark?
Yeah, right. For real. Yeah, man, I didn't understand why he was the underdog. This was a nice cash here for myself. They came out scrapping right away. Pineda dropped him in the first. He's always been a guy who I think has had underrated power. Showed it here. The knee from the headlock position in round 2 was filthy. He lands a right knee first, lifts the right knee, the right leg again like he's about to throw another, and then immediately switches it and fires the left knee, and Lutz just got obliterated. It was so sneaky and clever. And then he kind of does the same thing with the guillotine to finish the fight. He reached with his left arm, Lutz ducked inside, and he just swooped right over with the right arm and snuck it under. So some nice moments from Pineda in that fight, a big return for him. And also, just to note, this dude has 28 finishes in 28 wins. That is fucking crazy.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah, man. Okay. Did you both do Pineda? You did, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, featherweight division featured bout on the prelims. Lucas Alexander defeats Steven Peterson by UD. Mark, go first.
I thought there was a chance that maybe Peterson could ugly this fight up and find a way to steal it. But he was just at too big of a technique disadvantage in there. He never was able to change the fight in any way. Alexander moved so well all fight. Peterson couldn't find him, and he just picked Peterson to pieces. So this guy, he lost his debut to Joe Anderson Brito, who's very good as well. But we see now that Lucas Alexander is definitely a guy to keep an eye on. He's got some skills, so that was a nice first UFC win for him.
Absolutely. Omar.
Yeah, I don't really want to like super shit on a guy that just retired and came off of a loss, but that might have been some of the worst striking I've seen in a minute. Dude was falling all over the place, man. He kind of had shades of Juju from the other week. I mean, he was getting matadored left and right, and it was kind of wild. I don't know if I agree with the split decision. Maybe this is
No, there was
one
no
of
split
those-
decision, dude. It was 30-27 every card.
I'm reading the wrong one. My bad.
Yeah.
I thought I saw split decision for the next one.
No.
I was like, I'm pretty sure Lucas Alexander won this one pretty handedly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good performance from Lucas Alexander, and R.I.P. Steven Peterson.
Yeah.
It was wild that he got a mic to retire. Like, there have been dudes who are like, 10-year veteran, all highlights, who don't get a mic to retire, and he gets one. I was like, what the fuck is happening right now?
I'm gonna be honest, man. When he got on there, I was like, dude, who the fuck is this guy?
Oh, man.
Yeah, man.
It was like parallel universe. Even Lucas Alexander was like, it was an honor to fight him. He's such a veteran. I was like, the fuck is happening right now?
Dude, and I guess he called out, like, he was talking about Bisping and how him and Bisping had beef, and supposedly Bisping didn't know what the fuck this dude was.
He goes, that's news to me. Or, he goes, that's the first I've heard of it. Oh, man. I don't mean to be shitting on
I know.
I mean, the guy just retired from fucking MMA.
He seems like a good dude, to be honest.
He has a terrible back tattoo. My wife and I spent 15 minutes trying to figure out what is on his back. Never found out, by the way. We went through a lot of different choices. Never found out.
Okay, let's move on, shall we?
Let's.
Here we go. Welterweight division. Trevin Giles defeats Preston Parsons by split decision. Omar, take it.
This was a hell of a fight. This was some wild shit right here. I thought Trevin Giles got it pretty handily in the first round, if I remember right, and then Parsons got it pretty handily in the second round, and then the third round happens, and we're just going back and forth. It was it the other way around? Was it Parsons the first and then Trevin Giles the second? Okay.
Yes.
But by the third round, shit was out of control, and they were going back and forth. But by the end of that fight, by the time the bell rang, I did think Trevin Giles had done enough damage. He had done enough just to edge out, especially that third round specifically, and therefore the fight. So I know it was a split decision, but I did think that Trevin Giles was the one to win that fight.
Mark?
It is. I just looked it up on MMA decisions I hadn't looked yet. It's so fucking even. I don't know if I've ever seen a more even split. I pretty much agree with Omar. This was a great fight throughout. Giles looked good early on, but then obviously gets rocked. He gives up mount. He has his back taken, and Parsons is able to take round one. But Giles bounced back really well in round two, scrambled well, scored more, evened it up. And then, yeah, like Omar said, round three was really fucking close. I mean, crazy round. Both guys were pushing. Both guys knew how close it was. You could tell they were trying to do anything they could to score. I had Parsons ahead with, I don't know what, maybe minute and a half left. Giles was like trying to close that gap. He was landing more and more as the fight came to an end, and it kind of ended. And I was like, fuck, did Giles just kind of sneak that out at the end? Like, it was real close. Gun to my head, I think I'd say Giles, but it was another one of these fights where there really wasn't a wrong answer.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on now to the flyweight division. CJ Vergara defeats Daniel da Silva by TKO, second round. Mark, go first.
This man, Daniel da Silva, he looks so good to start every fight. He doesn't even always make it out of round one, but at least the first 2-3 minutes, you're like, yo, this guy's got some skills. And he just never, ever wins. He's 0-4 now in the UFC. I assume that's the end of the road here. They probably gave him a fourth shot just because of what I just said. With that said, I sort of think that fight should have been stopped, and he should have won it. I mean, Vergara was openly running away and just eating shots, and it went on for a really long time. I don't really like that visual. I think if I was the ref, I would have been like, all right, we're not going to keep doing this. But, hey, sometimes they don't get stopped, and that gave Da Silva just enough time to make one of his typical awful decisions. He lets Vergara get on top of him. Vergara saw his opening, and he absolutely poured it on. So, yeah, awesome comeback for Vergara.
Omar.
I disagree, man. I think this was probably one of the better moments in refereeing, to be honest,
Really?
especially during some dangerous moments. Like, this is one of those ones that, you teeter the line as to where do we call it, right? Like, where is it too much? And honestly, man, I thought Vergara had moments where we were right there. It was very much a WWE moment where we had 1, 2, and then he would do just enough to get out of the way, slip out of the way, duck out of the way. And he did it a few times. There were moments there where I thought he was fucked. I thought he was absolutely screwed. I want to say his ability to survive was super impressive. You don't really see that kind of composure. Not only survive, but then come back in the second round with what seemed like a fucking full tank of gas, which I don't understand that. But Daniel Da Silva made a lot of real errors in that fight, and I understand he got he got the rock. I understand he got that shot off, and he kind of. I would assume everybody in those moments are like, you got to go for the kill, and yes, but you don't chase a guy straight ever. You cut him off. You move laterally and you cut him off. This chasing the guy straight shit, I don't understand. They see one fight with Jones and Gustafsson or something like that, and they think that this is how you're supposed to do things. You don't chase him. You don't chase him down.
What you just
start
said
going side to side.
Not to cut you off just real fast and then you continue. What you just said is exactly what he fights like. He fights like a guy where, like, you taught him all the moves, but he can't think about how to do any of it properly and together and in the right order or whatever. That's how he
Dude, I'm sure in his head, it was kill, kill, kill. And that's it. No strategy, no nothing. Like, he had him hurt, and he just saw red, and he just went for it. The problem is no strategy, and Vergara was a survivor, man. You're going to find dudes like that you're going to have to baseball bat them in the head to put them out. Otherwise, they're going to keep moving. They're going to keep slipping. And they're going to be a problem because Vergara was throwing back, too, at certain points later on in that first round. And he caught Da Silva a couple times, and Da Silva's like, shit. I mean, he got to have a little bit better fight IQ, I think, when you get in those moments because you did have him hurt. And I think the necessity that he felt to finish in the first round is what cost him that fight. Because had he been a bit measured, had he just taken an extra second or two to cut the cage off and move properly and really get this man boxed into a point where he had nothing to do but defend, he could have really poured it on him safely without blowing his wad and really came out of that first round either winning the fight or better prepared to finish him in the second round. But hopefully he learns from this man and hopefully somebody really sits down and tells him that, like, these things you can't do at this level. Like, this is not regional shit. You got to be more measured. You got to be a little bit smarter about these finishes.
100%.
Lightning round.
I think we're going to the opening bout of UFC Fight Night, Sandhagen versus Vera and Victor. Altamirano defeats, how do you say his first name? Vinicius Salvador by UD. Omar, go first.
Altamirano has really good movement. I thought he had the better takedowns, the better ground game. A kid I think has, like I said, the good movement, but I don't know if he's going to really do anything in this division. He seems like somebody who might be able to edge out wins here and there, but I don't see him putting on any dominant performances, especially once we start getting into guys who have a little bit of experience here in the UFC. So it was a good showing for sure, but hopefully he brings a little bit more to the table in his next fight.
Mark.
So Salvador looks like he is a unique and creative striker. He was trying to play the Anderson Silva style mind games a little bit in there. His punches are very wide a lot of the time, though. He could certainly do well to tighten things up a bit. But Altamirano is no slouch as a striker, so he was able to hang, and he had the wrestling to lean on. And Salvador just spent too much of that fight on his back to get anything going, and he could do all the flashy things he wants when he's back on his feet. But if 10 minutes of the fight are on his back, card's probably ain't going to go your way. So a nice win for Altamirano.
And that does it for UFC Fight Night. Vera versus Sandhagen.